Alright, so the goal of today is to establish the land mass of our infographic, establish the setting. We will add the Mississippi River, and then block in our major points of interest. So I've got a new scene here. The first thing I'm going to do is File, Project Window, and create a new project. This is going to be Minnesota_infographic. Oops, if I actually hit new first. There we go, new. Minnesota Infographic.
Won't let me change the name for some reason.
Click new. Minnesota Infographic 01_blocking. Okay, that's the first save file that I will do. Click accept. And then I'm going to save my scene. Oops. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit there. I'm going to go over to my Finder here. This shouldn't be 01 blocking, it should just be Minnesota Infographic, because that's the project. So I'm going to rename that real quick. Minnesota Infographic. And then for my project name, or my scene name, rather, this will be Minnesota Infographic. I have a hard time typing and talking at the same time. And I accidentally hit enter. Sorry. We'll get there. It's Minnesota Infographic 01 blocking. Okay. And again, for the sake of clarity, because that was a mess. Minnesota Infographic is the name of my project. The name of my scene is Minnesota Infographic 01 blocking. Save as. There we go. So, I've got my scene set up. Now I can actually start doing things. In order to accurately depict the shape of the state of Minnesota, I need a reference image because I do not have that great a photographic memory that I know exactly what the dimensions are. And I have done a little bit of research ahead of time, and I will send these pictures to you. But I've got in this folder here, I've got a couple of relevant images. So I'll send you this image of the Mississippi River, and then this image of the outline of the state of Minnesota. And that's what we will use as our primary references. So these images are now on your desktop. Go ahead and copy them to your project folder, Minnesota Infographic, and then your source images folder. This way Maya knows where to look and they will find it very easily when you need them. Okay, with those copied over, back in Maya here, I'm going to maximize my top view. And I'm going to click on this little button right up here, which is image plane. It will bring an image plane into Maya that you can use as reference. Again, the image planes will come in as a background to whichever view you are in. So if you bring them into the perspective view, it'll be kind of at a weird 3D angle. If we bring it into the top view, it will be where we want it. So when you click the button, it opens up your dialog window, and for whatever reason it's not looking in the right place, so I'm going to go File, Set Project, and make sure that I have Minnesota Infographics selected. And now when I click the button, it should, there it goes. It looks in my source images folder by default, and I will choose Minnesota. Click open. There it is, pops right in. If I jump to my perspective view, you can see it's laying flat on the grid floor. So I've got my image imported. Now I need some geometry to actually start making look like Minnesota. Actually, I jumped the gun real quick. I'm going to select my image plane. I'm going to give it a new layer. So create a new layer and assign selected objects. This little icon right here. This is in the channel box layer editor. If your channel box layer editor is not open, click on this icon up in the top right of your screen and it will open. Okay. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to name it and call it Minnesota reference, save. I'm also, with the image plane selected, I've got this, where is it? Alpha gain. I'm going to set that to 0.5. This is the transparency of that image plane. So I'm just going to bring that down just a touch. And then I'm going to make it a reference layer, which means that I can no longer select it, which means I can't accidentally select it. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to, in my poly modeling shelf, I'm going to add a plane. So click on that. I'm going to call this plane Minnesota ground. And I don't need 10 subdivisions each way. I'm going to go with 6 across and 7 high. Okay. Once I have that, I can right click on it and I will go into Vertex mode. All right. To just roughly scale this to the appropriate size, and I'm not going to worry about these two little offshoots right now. I'm only going to scale it, well, you'll see here in a second, about that wide, well, a little bit wider. We'll move it over, and then I'm going to scale it vertically. Something like that. All right, get it a little bit, get it fairly close. All right, and now I'm going to grab the vertices in smaller groups and position them accordingly. All right, so I'm just going to move them over to the side, kind of hit, if there's like a major corner here, I'm going to try to hit that. This is a representation of Minnesota. This is not meant to be 100% accurate, so I'm not going to try to define every single twist and turn in the state's border. You can see right up here, this is that little like tab on the top of the state. So I'm going to set this vertex right at the corner of that tab. I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. And the one next to it, this vertex, I'm going to set down here. All right, no, and then I'll come back to that tab in a bit. All right, the rest of these I'm just going to roughly define the outline here. Again, I'm not too worried about the specific and individual outcroppings. All right, I'll move this right here to this little corner. I'm going to bring this right up here. Bring this one over. And this one up here. Move this one over so it's more or less in a line. I want to try to keep all of these vertices evenly spaced. It won't be exact, but I don't want like a really high concentration in one area and then a low concentration in another area. All right, just try to keep it somewhat even. Okay, I'll move this one over. And then for this little notch on the side, I can move that right up here. And I'll move this one down here. Okay, and now if I hit 5 on the number pad, it's not really going to see it in the top view. The reason why is because the image plane and my Minnesota plane are occupying the same space, so I'm going to quickly make that reference layer not a reference layer and just move it down a little bit. Then I'll make it a reference layer again. Okay, this way I can kind of see the outline of my state a little bit better. So with 5 on the number pad. All right, so I've got the general shape, and I kept the plane more or less square looking, and all these little outcropping is what we're going to do next. So again, I'm not worried about hyper detail, but I'm just going to go into edge mode. I'm going to select this side edge, and you can either shift right click and go to extrude edge, or in Maya 2018, hold down the shift button, hover over one of the arrows. In this case, it's the X axis. Hold down the shift button and where it says extrude, and then just pull that out to the side. And then I'm going to scale it down. Hit 4 to go into wireframe view. But I'm going to scale that down a little bit so it's closer to the actual shape. I'm also going to real quick make my reference layer a little bit more transparent. I'll go like 0.3 or 0.2, just so you guys can see, especially on the web. You can see the vertices and the edges a little bit better. Okay. I'll maybe rotate that just a touch. Okay. So that's the first one. And you could probably guess it's going to be the same thing for the other 3 outcroppings. So this top notch up here, with the edge selected, hold down shift, left click and drag in the appropriate direction. I'll bring that up. And then I'll switch over to Vertex and just grab this vertex and move it up to there. Okay. And now for these 2 bits, it's going to be slightly more complicated. Well, not really complicated, just a little bit more. So I'm going to select these 3 edges up here. And then same process. Hold down shift, left click and drag. And I think we'll do just that far for now. Select some vertices. I'll pull that down. And I'll pull this one up to right about 2 harbors. Okay, and now I'm going to select those edges again, or actually they're still selected if I go back to edge mode. Shift, left click, and drag out a little bit further to right about, I don't know, we'll say there. Go back to vertex mode, make my adjustments. I'll just grab this top vertex, move that up, and maybe we'll go up to there. Maybe this one down to here. Kind of define the inside of this curve right before Grand Marais. And then this vertex, it's a little bit different. I'm actually going to bring this vertex in here. So it's really stretching out this face. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down. I don't want it to be too stretched. And then I'm going to bring this vertex up to kind of even that out and not have anything that's too distorted or elongated. That means when we get to texturing, it's going to texture a little bit smoother. It's not going to, feel distorted. The light is going to bounce off of that a little bit better, and it just keeps things nice and smooth. I'm also going to just even these out a little bit. Again, trying to keep smooth, even topology, keep things square-ish. Okay, you can see that this is a little bit of a sharp angle, so maybe I'll move that over, ease that transition. Alright, that works. Now I'll go back into edge mode, select just these 2 edges this time, and I'll extrude those out, maybe to there. See how that works. So bring this down. Whoops. Bring this up. And then I'll bring this. That's a little stretched for my liking. Bring this to there. Do something like that. And then I'll extrude that last edge out one more time. That feels better. So bring that over. And that to about there. really don't like this thing there. That's a little bit too distorted for my taste. So, let's see what we can do about that. Might just move that over. Move that up. That's better. Okay, hit 5 with the number pad and look at this in the shaded view. I think that'll work. Yeah. And then looking down here, I think I actually want one more edge loop, because that's not really doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to move these vertices up, and then go into edge mode and insert an edge loop right in the center there. Now I've got 2 edges that I can extrude out to the side. Okay, so last 2 edges here, I will extrude those out. Bring this top vertex down. I'll actually bring these 2 vertices down too, again, to try to keep my edge flow nice and even. Maybe bring this down here a little bit more. And then last 2 edges here, extrude those out. Back into vertex mode and hit the high points. So there and there. And I don't really like the concave faces here. So I'm just going to try to keep that a little bit more square. As I look at this, I'm going to add one more edge loop too. Okay, and this is kind of the process of start with what you think is right, get it the best you can, and then take a step back, reassess, and decide if you need more edge loops or more geometry somewhere. Go ahead and add it. There is nothing wrong with that. It's all part of the process. And then once I add it, I'm going to go back and just even things out. You know, try to make relatively smooth transitions in form. You know, one thing I might do here is maybe I will delete this face right here. Okay, this little outcropping by Pine City. If I delete that, now I can take these 2 nearby vertices and define this a little bit better. Okay, something like that. And then what I want to do is, again, look at these sharp angles and just smooth that out a little bit more. Just bring those up. Bring that down a little bit. Okay, I think that feels better to me. So the next step here is going to be to add some thickness. So I've moved it up off the grid just a little bit. I'm going to go into edge mode and select the outer ring of edges, right? This outer edge loop. And I'm going to do a couple of extrusions just to give it a nice little, like a simple bevel. And then I'll bring it down to give it some thickness. So with the edges selected, I just double clicked on one edge, selected the whole ring. Shift right click, extrude edge. And I'm just going to hit R for just this. Actually, I'm going to undo that. Sorry. Shift right click, extrude edge. And I'm going to choose my offset tool. And I'll just do a little bit, like, we'll say 0.1. All right. And then, let's see, do I want to bring that down a little bit? Yeah, I think that'll be good like that. And then I'm going to shift right click, extrude edge again. Do another 0.1 offset. And this time I'm also going to bring it down. So I'll just hit W to bring up my move tool exclusively. And I'll move that down. Okay, so if I zoom in here, let's see, something like that. I think will work. All right, and then I'm going to hold on Shift and extrude it down, just straight down to just about the grid floor. All right, and I can even turn on grid snapping and snap it to the grid floor. All right. So now my state has some thickness to it. I don't have to worry about filling in faces underneath. Never really going to see that. Step for Minnesota, the land mass for now, is going to be adding some height difference in the terrain. So if you do a quick Google search for Minnesota, let's see, height map or elevation map. I did height map and that worked perfectly. We've got a few different representations of this, but basically it's using color to show the difference in elevation in different parts of the state. So in this case, this light yellow green is the lowest part, and then moving up in elevation, we've got a darker green, this like mustard color, and then into the yellow, the red, the brown, and the white is the highest part of the state. Right now, Minnesota generally is still a pretty flat state. There's no mountains in Minnesota. There's some hills, but regardless of what any of the ski resorts here would tell you, they're not actually mountains. Certainly somebody from Colorado would argue if you called anything in Minnesota a mountain. But there's still difference in elevation. So we want to express that in our state. So first I'm going to save, because I haven't saved in a while, and I want to make sure I don't lose my progress. Whoops. Okay. So I've saved. So I'm trying to save again. It says no changes to save, so I know I'm good. And you know, if we look at our reference, I'm just going to keep this open on the other screen. But this upper tip is higher. The top left kind of spine of Minnesota is a lower area. The area in here by the cities is lower, and then the southwestern corner of the state is higher. So that's what I'm going to try to reflect here. I'm going to go and do this in Vertex mode. And I'm not going to worry about the bottom vertices. I'm just going to worry about the top ones. So I'm going to select like all of these. All right. And I will move them up a little bit. Just not a specific amount. We'll say something like, I don't know, that. Okay. And then I will kind of taper these down. Make sure if you're box selecting, which again is just left click and drag, that you don't accidentally select, you know, something in the back. Like here I've got these accidentally selected. So be very careful of what you have selected. You know, you can select and then move around, or do this in wireframe mode. I'm just going to kind of bring this up, even it out a little bit. You know, this is an elevated area too. You can look at this in multiple views. Okay, so we've got, here's our front view, here's our side view. Top view is not very helpful in this instance. Just kind of bring it up. Now this is right in here. It's probably the tallest part, so I'll move that up slightly higher. Bring these up a little bit. Kind of falls off a little bit over here. You know, and maybe this area is slightly lower, so I'll select this little top outcropping, deselect that bottom vertex, and I'll move this down just a touch. And actually, that and this, and maybe that can go down just a little bit. Alright, and then this spine of the state, this is that one of the lowest parts of the state, so I'll select that, hold down shift, select all of those. Now bring that down even lower. That's good. Bring this down just a little bit. Maybe I'll bring these down just a touch too. Okay, southwestern corner of the state, this part's a little bit higher. So I'll select all of these and bring those up a little bit. And a little bit more. Because these are roughly even with the top tip of the state, so I'll bring those up to about there. Bring these up to kind of even it out a little bit. Maybe not that one. Okay. Maybe this area is a little bit taller. And then this area is the lower part. So I'll select a bunch of these vertices. And bring them down. And maybe that one and that one. Okay. That might have been a little too far. Go to wireframe here and just kind of compare with the rest of... Well, actually that's about right. Maybe like there, and I'll bring just this section down a little bit further. Okay. So there's my now kind of bumpy state. I'm gonna look through and like this is a little bit too bumpy for me. Oops, let me go back to Vertex. So I'm gonna bring these up, bring this down, and just kind of even things out a little bit. You know, like I was doing before with the spacing looking top down. I want to do the same thing with their relative heights. I don't want too extreme of a difference between sections here. You know, so I'm going to look at this from all views, kind of figure out what is not quite sitting right, and make that adjustment. Alright, I think that will work. I'll bring that up a little bit.